Hi, Tony from All the Remote Things back again this week. And I've got Kristen with me. Kristen Belcher, it's fantastic to have you on the cast. How are you today?
Good, Tony. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm fantastic. And we've been sitting in the silence, haven't we? Because Kristen likes a good silence when she's working with
I
customers.
do. A good awkward silence is one of my favorites.
Brilliant. Hey, look, before we get started, if you want to stay connected and learn more about our community, we'd really like you to join our Discord server and our community. Just go to remoteaf.co, click the community button, and join us. You can check out our latest blog article on async and how you work in async. So that's great. Links are in the description below. Join us. As well, there'll be links to all about the things that Kristen talks about. So, without further ado, Kristen, would you like to introduce yourself for those that don't really know you?
Sure. Thanks. So I'm Kristen Belcher. I'm currently an organizational change management consultant and coach with a company called Agile Extended. I'm based in the US. I live in Michigan. And I have been an Agile coach. I've been a release train engineer. I've been a Scrum Master. I started out my professional life as a software developer. So I very much have a nerdy heart. And then I also have four kids. They're not toddlers and teenagers anymore, but that's the spread. And we have a rescue dog too. So
Woo!
hopefully you don't hear him in the background.
Well, we'll welcome him in. We've had plenty of that before. Let alone for, I know what that's like as they come through the door. You go, oh, something you're not supposed to be here. But anyway,
Right.
I'm really excited to have you on. You've been part of our remote agility framework or the RAF community for some time, and the other day you attended one of our events. Actually, it was lovely to have you in there, and it was around psychological safety and nice debate, and
Yeah.
it seemed really pointed because we were about to do this as well. So it was fantastic to have you. Um, what I really wanted to talk to you about, you're really passionate about applying models. And I want to talk to you what you mean about models. When you say you're passionate about applying models, talk to me about those.
Yes. So I'm actually prepping for a talk about applying Agile models at Agile and Beyond. So if anybody's coming to Michigan in June, which is a lovely time to come to Michigan, by the way, come see me. But yeah, so models in my mind, one thing to distinguish really quick is like models and frameworks, and some people use those terms interchangeably. What I mean by a model is something that helps you make sense of the world around you. Like it's a tool to be used for sense making versus a framework is like a way you can do your work. Like it is a frame for your work. Get it? Um, so, so that's not too elementary, but I wanted to draw the distinction there, because like when I am thinking about working with a client or kind of like looking at a space, I really like to be in that messy middle space, and that the mess there is between the people who are doing the work, who are actually making software, making products, maybe they're making communications, or they're making sales, and the folks who are steering the ship. But in the middle there, there's a lot of work to do around like enhancing the environment and enabling people to do their work better. And that's kind of the space that I like to play in. Also, that explanation was just based on the SEAM model that Esther Derby uses in her book
That
about 7 rules for positive productive
is
change.
it. Yes.
So that's like that's one model. Is I have looked at that and gone, oh, that's the work I like to do. I like to do the work that goes on in the middle of that seam model. And like sometimes that model is like hierarchical in an organization, but other times, I mean, you have to steer your own work, or maybe if you're leading a team, you're steering, you're doing
Yeah.
steering work on your team. And maybe you've got other teammates who are doing things that are enhancing and enabling the environment. And sometimes even if you're a leader, you're the person who's making something. You might have to make a presentation to your board, or you might have to make a pitch to a client. So anybody can be doing lots of that work. And I think if you apply that model with almost like a sphere of influence, or like circles in soup, you've probably seen in a retrospective frame.
Oh, yeah.
What can you do for yourself? if you look at it like sideways, like a periscope, like what can you do yourself? What do you need to influence? And what is all the stuff that's out of your control, but that you choose your reaction to? And sometimes people are doing steering of an organization that is out of your control. So what can you choose your reaction to? Like what can you influence and kind of pull it in that way? And that helps you, one, make sense of the world around you, but two, kind of model your thinking about, okay, what is it that I can do here? Like it helps you get unstuck.
I love that you're using the C model, by the way. Great.
It's one of my favorites.
I'll do the great shout out. Hi, Esther, because Esther's a great friend of ours, and I love the C model. We and in remote agility framework, we've done a lot of work with Esther, so we really love her as well. So, and I like the fact that you defined models and frameworks. It's interesting that you did that. Let me. We're called the remote agility framework, right?
Right.
And I wrote something in this a while ago. People asked us, well, what does it all mean? Excuse me, a little croaky this morning. And when we were putting that together, we actually did think about process, but then it was wrap, and we weren't cool enough to pull that off. And then it was because we thought model, and we thought RAM. Well, that's not real cool either. So we settled on framework as the middle ground to those. But I do like the definition between framework and model, because I see that actually is where it sits. Now,
I
in
would agree.
when we're talking about those models and things, and I love that you talk about working in the messy middle, the marshmallow layer, as I call it. The information goes in here, information goes in here, and it doesn't go anywhere.
And it's just sticky. I mean, it is the best part of a s'more, really.
That is it, really, isn't it? Yes. So, but as part of that, you really do think about that organizational thinking and system design. And I know you look at a lot around that team design and selection and value stream stuff. Talk to me a little bit about your approach to that.
Mm, yeah. So, okay. I'm like, where do I start here? Like any good messy middle conversation, where do you get started? If we'll apply another model, like I might start with why. And that's what I like to help teams do is like, okay, why are you here? Why do you exist? Like, no, I don't care if you're using Scrum or Kanban or Safe or Waterfall or whatever it is you're doing. I'm not asking you how are you doing your work. I'm not asking you what even you're creating. I'm asking you like, why do you start? So like if you golden circle it, thanks to Simon Sinek for that one, there's a model. But like asking a team to start with why, like why do they exist? Why are they here? Okay, well, this is what our company does. This is the purpose that we serve within a company. Um, and from there, if we apply another model, I'm going to talk about so many models, Tony. But if we apply another model, like I don't know if you're familiar with the spine model, but it starts off with like needs and like what is it that the company needs from you. And I also like to turn that on its head for a team and say, what is it that you need as part of this team? Like, what do you need in your work environment? And then from there, we can talk about values and what are the company values, maybe what are, some of the team's values, the things that they really key into from their company values or from other places. And then with a spine model, it goes down into like principles. And that's where you start getting into like, oh, okay, we're gonna make sure that we are focus before freak out is like one that I've heard before. And so that like instead of being like, oh my gosh, there's too many things, okay, what's one thing I can focus on? Like the team has a principle to do that. And then their practices might be we have stand up every day. Not we have stand up because we're agile or because we have stand up we're agile. Not that one. Um, but we have stand up to help us focus. Okay, cool. That's a practice we'll do. And then, tools are the very bottom of the spine model. And normally tools are the thing that people are like, oh, yeah, we'll just use this tool and then everybody will do it the right way. That's backwards. And so that last tool being like, okay, what is the tool we're going to use that's going to help us, have a stand up on the daily, make sure we're actually achieving this focus over freak out, that type of thing. So that's like kind of the space I like to be in is helping teams figure that out. Oh, just a sec. I have a little visitor.
We got a visitor. Welcome. Bless.
Okay, all set.
That's fine. We'll edit that out. Or we might. we,
Either way.
we like to have those things in. So, and one of the models I know that you gravitate towards in talking about those models, well, we're talking about models because it really is a model, although people treat it as much, much more, is OKRs, because you're talking about traversing,
Mm.
steering, enabling, enhancing, and making. And how do you plug all of those in together? I think you have to be very careful about. I interviewed Stephen Bungay, if you know him, the art.
Okay, yeah.
And one of the things he said about OKRs is be really clear about your OKRs. Make sure what you're doing with your OKRs and what you want, because you're going to get what you want and more than what you want of that if you use them wrongly.
Yes. Oh yeah, I absolutely agree with that. With OKRs, I think I've found that they can be a great tool to use. Or I mean, we can split hairs between tools and practices, I suppose. But but I think OKRs, like you said, can be really, really powerful if you're using them, I'll say succinctly. What I have definitely seen happen in certain environments is that OKRs sound like a great idea. So everybody's going to have a million OKRs. You're going to have your own OKRs. Your team's going to have OKRs, and then your department's going to have OKRs, and then the company's going to have OKRs, and everybody's OKRs are going to be everywhere. And it is like OKR palooza, and it's also OKR overwhelm. That's a lot of what I've seen recently with OKRs. But I do think they can be a great guiding light for people to say, like, this is the big objective. Here's our big, hairy, audacious goal. And here are the ways that we're going to know that we're on track to reaching that goal. And, checking in on OKRs, like actually following the practices around OKRs and like doing your check ins and seeing if you're on track and seeing if you need to make adjustments and having those fast feedback loops like we would advocate for in any agility framework out there. Having those fast feedback loops is what's going to be really useful, as opposed to set it and forget it OKRs, because like you can't crock pot your OKRs. Like it is very much a microwave oven.
Oh, I like that. Oh, I'm going to steal it.
Please do.
Crock pot it. That's good. Talking to Jeff Godelf about them as well. And it lines up with what you're saying. You're saying, about very succinct people. One of the big things that people do with OKRs, too many.
So many.
Yeah. So what's your take on that? How do you fashion that back into making sure that they are succinct?
Mm. I mean, that honestly takes time and it takes practice. It's, I mean, to me, it's like shooting free throws. Like it takes practice. And every once in a while you hit like a really good one. You're like, oh yeah, I'm good at these now. And then you do it again. You're like, ooh, I'm a little bit off. But one thing I found really helpful, and especially for leadership teams who are trying to like coalesce around shared OKRs, is to distinguish between what a key result is and what a KPI is, like a KR versus a key performance indicator. Now I have another visitor now.
Oh.
Just a sec. We are scootering and bike riding this
Oh, well, there we
afternoon.
go.
So we need helmets. It's very important.
Indeed.
Um, oh yeah. So KRs and KPIs, I think making that distinction has been really helpful because we can say, okay, your KPIs are like your vital signs. Like those are the things. Yes, we need to, track our sales numbers, or we need to track our revenue, or we need to track our expenses, those types of things. If that's not what you're focused on, like if that's not really the goal isn't to get higher sales number. I mean, I guess the ultimate goal is always probably make more money, but that's not really the goal. Like that's a byproduct of your goal. So like yes, we want to keep track of whether or not we're making more money, but the key result is really going to be that indicator of, are we making progress on our actual objective, not just focusing on the numbers.
Yeah, no,
if that makes
I like that. I like that delineation because that is something they struggle with a lot. What's a
sense.
KPI versus a KR? That's
Yeah. I worked with a coach once who explained it as like your road atlas versus your GPS. Like you can plan things out and you can like check the dials on the dashboard. That's your like those are your KPIs. Like, do you have enough gas? Is the engine overheating? Or I guess in the realm of electric cars, like, do you have enough battery? Um, and but then your GPS is what's going to tell you like, yes, you're on the right track, or it's going to say like, oh, there's road work ahead, recalculating. And like those are the things that you need to continue to adjust versus like whether or not the car is still functional.
I really like that. That sort of flows into your other great passion, which is really continuous improvement. And we're talking retros. Retros is at your heart. Talk to me
Uh,
about that.
yes, I do like to think that I'm saving the world one retrospective at a time. Um, I've been really influenced a lot in the realm of retrospectives by another great Esther Derby book that she wrote with Diana Larson about agile retrospectives. Um, I guess it was a while ago now. I first read it many moons ago, and I've reread it, and I've used a lot of the tools in there. And I think, you know, it's funny is in my mind the five stages of a retrospective is also a model that I use because I model how I start or how I plan, you know, any activity or any meeting I'm going to be facilitating in that way. Like, how am I setting the stage? What data do we need to gather? How can we, you know, do something to generate insights from that? And then come out of our meeting deciding what to do. And then how do we really close it and like feel good about, yes, we did this thing and now it is done and we can move forward and, you know, continue to iterate and experiment. And I think for me, as a Scrum Master, I found retrospective so valuable because my team could figure out how to get better together and not just like, hey, let's try a thing to get better, but then let's also retrospect on how we retrospect so we can learn how we learn better together. And like that collaboration was an achievement unlocked, especially in my early days of being a scrum master and trying to figure out like how do I help my team get better and how do I get better at helping my team get better. And I've carried that forward. I think they're effective with small teams, large teams. Um, but one thing I will stand firm on is that you need a facilitator and someone has to facilitate your retrospective. It can't just be like you walk into a room and like it somebody said it's retrospective time and then it just magically happens.
Yeah.
Like someone needs to facilitate that conversation. Depending on their comfort level, maybe they can do it without any planning. I like to have time to plan because I like to think of new things to try and, you know, apply those models in context and see what might work with my team. And if I facilitate, I don't participate. That is my rule. I've tried to break that rule more recently. I'm like, oh, I've been doing this a long time. I can do both.
No, no, it doesn't work.
No, I can't. No, I can't.
Yeah. And please, if you're doing retrospectives, there's so much more out there, as Kristen said, than what worked well, what worked didn't work for us, what puzzles us. Excite your teams around them.
Yes, so much. I'll throw a shout out to Chris Stone,
Oh,
who's
yeah.
virtually agile. Oh
Mm,
my gosh, his retrospective templates are
yeah.
hilarious and fantastic. The Taylor Swift one's still my favorite.
Yeah. We've had Chris on here, so shout out to him, along with Diana and Esther. So we've had the three of them on here, and they're all so passionate about that retrospective. So, and it's great to hear it from you. Now, one of the things I know that you do with it though is you don't just do teams, right? You might have done it.
Right.
Yeah, as many of us started out as scrum masters and etc., and you grow into the coaching and etc. You're now working more, and I know you call it organizational dynamics retrospectives. Really interested in that one because that's not one I've heard of before. So I'm always happy to learn new stuff, and I'm sure everybody else is as well. So, talk to me about that.
Yes. So looking at like seeing the whole system And here's a warning. Once you see it, you like can't unsee it. So there's it's a double-edged sword of being able to see the system. But looking at the dynamics that happen between different areas of organizations and then trying to bring those people together to sort out what's happening and helping them see the system together, that is something I think, I mean, really that's key for our next evolution from agility, like business agility, not just like technical stuff, but even beyond that. I mean, I think there's a whole world beyond with sustainability and agile for planet and all of that kind of stuff too. But I think it's helping people see that they are part of a larger organizational ecosystem, and that the things that are going on in their world are probably having ripple effects in other places, and they might just not know that because no one's ever told them, or because maybe they've never thought to look. And so I love the opportunity to especially like get leadership teams together and have them find shared understanding around that, and then be able to get their staff together and at a really not a strategic level, but at a really practical and tactical level, say, okay, what does this mean for us? And sometimes it gets a little meta. And sometimes people are like, I don't see the practicality of this. Um, but I think you can work through that and say like, okay, so if this is, strategically these two departments are supposed to work together on, you know, budget or something like that. Okay, well, when you make this budget decision over here, how does that impact this department? Well, I don't know. They just follow our decision, right? And they're like, oh no, that's not what we do. Here are the 17 steps that we have to take once you make a change. Oh, and then you really get some like practicality epiphanies of like, oh, I see. I didn't think it was that hard. Why is it that hard? Can we make it less hard? And get people talking and like really shift the way that folks think about how they're doing their work together. It's pretty exciting.
I'm always amazed when they start talking, and I think that's the interesting thing that you put in
I
there.
know.
It is the catalyst to conversation, is the way I like to think about retrospectives, because if you can catalyze them into conversation and then action from the conversation, that's
Yes.
a really important thing. So speaking of that, you do a lot of these, and I'm interested in your take on it, because people are listening to this. So give me the top three things that you shouldn't do in retrospectives that you see really make bad retrospectives. I mean, I know you could probably list a lot
Oh,
of that. You could, but just give me
okay.
top three. Top three.
Okay, top three. Top three bad advice for retrospectives. This is a good one. Uh, Number one, the facilitator does all the talking. You are not there to talk. If you are a facilitator, you are there to hold space. You're there to give instructions for like and encourage, like cultivate that warmth and that safety and that environment for people to have potentially really messy, nasty conversations that they need to have.
Yeah.
So like we were talking about the awkward silence earlier. Embrace the awkward silence, facilitators. Don't fill it with the sound of your own voice. Okay, so that's one. The facilitator does all the talking. That's some really terrible advice. Another piece of terrible advice uh would be people only talk to people they like,
Yes.
which you know, sometimes that's helpful to get folks to warm up, especially if you're doing this remotely, you're doing some breakout rooms and things like that. But even if you're in person, or if you're playing the hybrid game and you're, having somebody in a room talk to somebody on the phone, try to mix it up, right? Like you want people to be able to interact with other people, and especially the larger you scale your retrospectives, the more important that is. Um, because like if you just have teams talk to the same people they work with on a team every single day, then why did you get 5, 6, 12 teams together to do a big giant retrospective.
Brilliant.
Um, let's see. The talking thing. Oh, don't have any action items. That is my last piece of terrible advice.
Yeah, there we go. I was glad you bring that up.
Um,
That's actually one of my passions. Is I say to everybody, you have to have actions for everything. You have to have them for the good stuff and the bad stuff because they usually gravitate to the bad stuff, right?
right.
But they don't do anything about the good. And the way I always talk about it is good's the enemy of great. I know it's an old saying, but the reality is that stuff came from the bad stuff. So it's going to slide back if you don't do something about it, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. I once ran a program for some development teams about actionable action items. And so we spent a lot of time basically retrospecting on everybody's different retrospectives and saying like, okay, so what action items did you have last time? Action items. Like some of the responses were, we never have any action items. Okay. Are you getting better? Well, I don't know. How could we tell? I'm like, well, there are a few ways we could tell. We could, maybe collect some data on what? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the amount of work your team is doing or like your cycle time or, you know, we won't get into the like story point debate, but like counting story point, like count a thing, whatever it is, days until completion. I don't know. I'm like, we could count some stuff. Let's look at the stuff we could count and then maybe we'll decide to count one. And they're like, "Oh, we should do that?" I mean, you don't have to. It's like, is that the thing you want to get back? Does your team want to get more work done? Is that where they're at? Or like, do you want to hate each other less? Like,
I love
like
it.
it kind of depends on what you think you want to get better at. Oh, do we have to get better at something? Oh, I mean, you don't have to. Are you perfect? Well, no. Okay, well, maybe, maybe you could get
That's
better at something.
action targets. I use action targets, and we use action targets in RAF a lot as well, right? And
Oh, yeah.
I zone them with 24, 48, 72. You can do whatever you like, but the reality is
Yeah.
what's really important. What do you want to do now? What do we want to pick off right now? What can wait, and what can needs to be a little bit further out, and really just make them focus on getting some of those. So I love what you're doing with that. That excites me.
Yeah. Yeah. The going back to the sphere of influence too, I've had a lot of teams who will just focus on all of the stuff that's in the soup, if you will, that's like out of your control. And so it's like pulling them in and being like, well, what could you influence? Is there anyone you could influence on this? And if the answer is no, it's like, oh no, this is a corporate decision. It came from the CEO. Like, I'm not going to email them. Okay, well then you can still choose your reaction. Right now, you're choosing to be complainy. Like, you can keep choosing that reaction or you could choose something different. But often they'll find, like, oh, well, I guess we could talk to our management about this decision, about how it impacts us, and see if they could, get some clarification. Okay, cool. That's not even influence anymore. Like, that's a thing in your control. You can just go do that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, so we're very close to the end of our time, and I do want to talk about async and remote working because I know you're very passionate about it. Hence, you joined the Remote Agility Framework community. Hence, we met.
Indeed.
Uh,
Indeed. This is part of why I'm here. Yeah.
which is great. Which is gives us an opportunity to meet wonderful people like yourself. So, talk to me about your take on working in the async. Right. We have a saying in RAF, work is in your home and your home is in your work. And the reason I bring that up is because we were visited by your children today. I said we might we
Yes,
might
we were.
we might leave that in. Well, I can guarantee you we'll leave it in because as far as I'm concerned, that's what happens now. This is how we
Yeah.
work, right? But I'm really interested to hear your versions of working in the async.
Yeah. So, I've a lot of my remote work so far since I was not remote before COVID. So I am like a newly remote as of, 2020, early in 2020. Um, and at first it was freaking me out. I gotta be honest, because I'm like, how am I gonna do this? I have always avoided like the plague remote and and probably without even knowing it, async work as well. And a light bulb went off for me probably in April of 2020, where I said, oh, I could really learn something here. People have been doing this. It has to work, and it could probably work even better.
Yeah.
Um, and during that, like during that time, I also had gotten Kirsten Clasey and J. Allen Morris's
Ah,
book about the remote facilitators
wonderful
talking
human beings.
guide. Yes, they are great, and their book is fantastic. And I've learned a lot from them through that and through some like async facilitation stuff they've done as well, where I said like, oh, there are other ways to do this and ways where more people could contribute more based on how they craft their workday. And I think for me, it's about I can't, oh, I found it. I have a little spoon on my desk and it says, she designed a life she loved.
Lovely.
And I got this to remind me that, like, that's what this new world
Yeah.
is that, it's figuring out, it's honestly, it's human-centered design for yourself and for your family and for your community around you, and figuring out how you operate best. Some of us are morning people. You are up very early in the morning right now. Some of us are more night owls. I will not claim that, but it is the end of my normal workday, so I'm still functional. But I think like thinking about that and thinking about how people can really leverage their energy to engage when they're most productive and when they're able to focus, like that asynchronous collaboration I've seen be really useful when people commit to doing their work that way. What have seen a lot of over the last 3 years is folks who are trying to continue to work synchronously and continue to work the way we used to work in offices when we were face to face in the same place at the same time all the time. And that I think has not been as successful. And that's been one of the challenges I've struggled with asking people to try asynchronous work. Like I've tried some asynchronous retrospectives and oh, here's a bonus uh terrible facilitation tip. Give a team an asynchronous retrospective, go on vacation for a week and expect them to have done it by the time you get back. That was it. That I mean, that's my failure bow. Like I learned I learned there very much. But I think there's a lot to be said for having that opportunity to connect with people all over the world with different perspectives, with different experiences, asynchronously, that we just need to learn how to do it better because we're often not that patient. That's what I'm finding is like the synchronous work, there's an immediacy to it. You and I are speaking face to face right now, and that's great. And there's a time and a place for that. But I mean, we've all sent emails for years, right? Like we can't figure out how to work together asynchronously when we've sent emails, or people used to send faxes, telegrams. Like
That's
I think there's something to be said for like we are so used to instant gratification and immediacy that even instant messaging, which is technically an asynchronous platform, doesn't get used that way.
no, and I think there's this construct you need to put around it, right? So I think it's actually like any other model, tool, or
Yeah,
method. You actually have to think about how you do it. It's not just one of those things, and I think that's the trap I see people falling into. You were talking about that before. Is that it'll just happen, and the reality is
right.
it's been so ingrained in us for so long to work in a different way. Now, here at Remote, we believe async is the future. In fact, we believe in the future that will be one of the most important models that we've ever worked with.
Yeah,
Really being intentional about how you design your async and what you get, because not everything can be async, right? Let's be really honest about it.
agreed. Yeah. Yeah, like asynchronous, you have to let somebody go. I probably don't break up over a
Right way to do
text,
that. I think we've
you
seen
know?
bad ones of those.
Yeah, that's not a good choice. And sometimes, if you're getting to know someone, like, yeah, you can absolutely build a relationship through text on a screen, but sometimes this is going to be more effective
Yeah.
and maybe more efficient even. Like I am not one for efficiency. I don't care because I think it's a thing we can get to. I'm all about efficacy. Like I'm all about making things effective. And so like let's focus on making it effective first and then we can figure out how to make it more efficient.
Yeah, I agree with you in total. And if you're watching this, reach out to someone. It doesn't have to be Raf. This is not an ad for us. Reach out to someone like Kristen, or reach out to someone who's doing this, and get them to help you do it in a better way. Because, and don't let it burn your experience. Because I talk to people and say, I had a bad experience with it. So okay, are you are you doing it well? And these are the things that you have to think about. And once you start to work your way through, it's like anything else that you do. You have to be very intentional about it. So um, Kristen, we're very, very, very close to the end of our time, unfortunately. How can people get in touch with you? How can they get involved with some of the stuff that you've talked about today?
So the first one is LinkedIn. I am I am on there. You will find me at Kristen Belcher, and I can give you a link to add to the show notes
I'll
if
be
you would
following.
like. Perfect. Um, I am also in the RAF Discord server, so you can find me on there. I don't remember what my handle is, but we'll figure that out. And then my website is snarkandfire.com. And also my company's website is Agile Extended. That's all one word. So the E in Agile is also the E in extended.com. And we are definitely open and willing to help you figure out how you want to extend agility into all of the things you're doing.
That's absolutely brilliant. All of those will be in the show notes and more for you, along with the async blog I talked about before, which really links into what we were talking about. So we hope you enjoy that. Thank you so much for being on all the remote things with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Tony, and thanks to everybody listening. I hope to hear from you.